Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. I want to introduce tonight's show by reading you some words written by the beloved spiritual coach and author, Iyanla Vanzant, in the foreword to the book we're going to be discussing tonight, which is called Your Journey to Love, Discover the Path of Your Soul's True Mate, by tonight's guest, Simran Singh. Iyanla Vanzant wrote, "You want to ignore it, but you can't. You want to call it something else, but every time you get that gnawing feeling, that empty feeling in the pit of your stomach, you know your behaviour has gotten you into trouble again. You've been repeating your patterns, telling your stories, doing your thing. You've been acting desperate, acting needy. You've been giving more than you had to give, settling for less than you needed or wanted. And now you feel alone, angry, stuck and afraid, guilty and ashamed. It doesn't have to be that way. You just want to be loved. That's what we all want, to be loved totally and unconditionally. We want to be valued and honoured, held and heard, understood and respected. No matter what we've done, where we've been, or how we've gotten to where we are right now, we all just want to be loved." Simran Singh is the publisher of the monthly award-winning 1111 magazine and host of 1111 Talk Radio, as well as author of the IPPY Gold award-winning book Conversations with the Universe, and Your Journey to Enlightenment, and most recently, Your Journey to Love, in which she courageously infuses her own personal experiences of living. Simran Singh, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Sandie. Thank you.
Wow, Simran, who among us does not resonate to the pain, to the loneliness and the confusion so beautifully captured by Iyanla Vanzant in her foreword to your book, Your Journey to Love?
You know, it really is what makes us all the same. We go through our life journeys, we go through experiences of losing ourselves so that we can find ourselves. We oftentimes come into families for the sole purpose of them supporting our growth by being the individuals that really create the discomfort or the conditioning or the disillusionment that we start to live with. And what she speaks about in that foreword, it is part of that journey of the soul. And there comes a point where it doesn't have to be the painful part. We can actually shift it into really seeing that there was a part of us that loved us so deeply that it was willing to go through all of that, to have us rediscover the power, the presence, and the brilliance that we each hold.
Well, I want to get to that part a little bit later, just as you do in your wonderful book, which you open by saying that every individual on the planet in this moment is facing a variety of questions in their lives. All are on a quest for meaning, personal discovery and life transformation, whether conscious of it or not. And in a world that has become harsh, aggressive and afraid, people seek outward for love and acceptance. Love and money rank in the top two desires for most people, with love being significantly stronger. Why does love have to cause us so much fear, pain and confusion?
I believe it's because we don't really know what love is. We were taught a version of love that is not love at all. It is a diluted, changed, twisted version of love. And then our stories, our fairy tales compound that. Our movies change that by giving us some other image that we believe love is supposed to be. And so we keep bouncing back between the love that we were conditioned to receive and this utopian version of love that even itself is not real. and we never truly get an understanding of what true love is until we're willing to discover it in and for ourselves.
You write in the book about how fairy tales, mythology, and even scripture, can give us unrealistic ideals and beliefs about how relationships should be created and experienced. Why do you think, if it's true that we are love, and I do believe that we are, although many of us struggle with that one, to feel it all the time, where did we go wrong? Where did we go awry?
It's interesting how that part of the book came to be. I had forgotten as a child that I had joined a pottery class and that I had done some painting. And I was really, really young at the time, and my teacher gave me a piece, a large piece that she had in her studio that I had loved, and it was Cinderella. And I had forgotten about it, and at the time I was writing this book, I had moved back and I was unpacking some boxes, and there was a box that I didn't recognize, and inside of it was this piece. And my first book is Conversations with the Universe, and I talk about how signs, symbols, and synchronicities show up and the world speaks to us. And I open this up as I'm writing this book, Your Journey to Love, and I start thinking about the story of Cinderella. And there's so many pieces of that story that so match portions of my life, particularly from the work aspect and hiding and different things, that I started to think about fairy tales, and I started to look at my mother's life, and I started to look at my sister's life, and I started to look at friends' lives, and I started to ask people, what was the most important fairy tale that you remember having heard or read or fallen in love with? And when I would hear what they had fallen in love with or what they were used to, even boys or men, their lives mirrored the one that they had most resonated with. And so somehow I do believe that our psyche somehow picks up on that story and helps us live that journey so that we do move towards that so-called fairy tale ending. And in the fairy tale, we each have a villain. We have, the one that's going to come save us. We have the magic. We have different pieces. But the ultimate answer is to love the self in the end. And so these fairy tales have their metaphysical side, but then they also have their shadow side. And we kind of live the full gamut of that throughout our own lives. And so that's why I start the book that way, because so often when we realize who we've modeled our lives after, we can begin the steps of not only self-love, but not some of the same patterns and habits that follow that storyline.
It's interesting how we cling to those kinds of ideals, and yet for many people, their childhood experience shows them that that's a fairy tale.
Well, it all has to do with our inner child. You did that beautiful summit, The Return to Love, which so profoundly illustrates that it is the child that we must work with, that we must go back and embrace, and that we must remember, because he or she is the one that is designing our whole life. That is what is sitting in the subconscious. And so to go back and really embrace and understand that the shadow formed within that child that began as whole, that began as essence, but very quickly became conditioned. Very quickly their energy consumed the different energies and entities that were surrounding it, of people that were dense, people that had taken on their own beliefs and patterns, and then we lived those things out. And so it really is the child that we must go back and rediscover.
Simran, you've been described as a rebel humanitarian, a transformational catalyst, a creative visionary, and a strong and vulnerable voice in the field of consciousness who boldly catalyzes unconditional love and clarity in the face of all that masks, denies, and manipulates individuals from being fully present. Like many of us, you've been on your own journey to discover the meaning of love. Tell us where that journey began for you.
The journey ultimately began in the earliest places of childhood, where I completely gave myself away before knowing I gave myself away. And it was trying to fit into two different cultures. It was trying to conform to, an arranged marriage. It was slowly and steadily taking on the beliefs and really allowing the heart to be so wounded and forgotten. And the interesting thing about self-help and self-love is we treat ourselves as these objects that we continually do things for ourselves for, but that's not really self-love. Self-love is integrating it so deeply that we have a deep understanding of who we are and who we've been, which is so much of what this book is about. This is beyond surface love. This is beyond conditioned love. This is beyond the actions of doing love. This is about being love. This is about totally embracing love from all aspects. And so all of these issues began in childhood, and then they just compounded. I tell people that we have echoes, and so whatever wounds have taken place, at whatever ages they took place, they will then repeat as echoes, and they will compound, and they will get bigger. So anything that happens later, such as a marriage or such as issues that happen with children or parents or anything else, they're going to continue to compound until we go back to the very beginning. I'd like to also talk a little bit about the two primary titles that I have that people mention, and one is Love Catalyst and the other is Rebel Humanitarian. And the reason that I say these two things is partially to get people to go, huh? What is that? What does that mean? Who knows what that is, and who gets themselves called that? And it's more so to have people really think about the words, because a love catalyst can be a variety of things. A love catalyst can be the person that really triggers someone, that really upsets someone, so that they have to get into love. Or it can also be the person that opens your heart enough to understand what real love is.
Simran, I'm going to hold you there, and we're going to return to this after the break. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with author and publisher of the award-winning 1111 magazine and host of 1111 Talk Radio about her book, Your Journey to Love. We'll be back in a few moments.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Radio's What Is Going On show. If you've been on a spiritual journey and know yourself to be more than just your body, mind and emotions, yet still struggle to fully love yourself and the life you're living, if you experience childhood challenges that continue to play out as limiting patterns in your daily life, if you long for success in your relationships and career but keep finding it eludes you, the Journey Back to Love Symposium will not only dramatically shift your perceptions about love, but also help you understand and integrate all the places where you may have secretly believed you were broken. Filmed over 7 days with 8 internationally renowned teachers and speakers, the Journey Back to Love Symposium series is packed with life-transforming insights, tools, practical processes, gifts, and wisdom. So, if you're ready to transform your beliefs about love, success, and freedom, and to finally put all your perceived limitations, fears, and failures in your relationships and life behind you, I invite you to visit thejourneybacktolovesymposium.com and start your journey back to love at a huge discount with the coupon code JBL3.
My name is Meera Batra, and this is How I Live United. Many families have come to America for a better life. I advocate for these families with United Way. United Way empowers them to see opportunities available. We help them get involved with their kids, schools, and network within the community. My name is Meera Batra. I help families see opportunity and succeed. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Simran Singh, prior to the break, you were explaining what those appellations, love, catalyst and rebel, humanitarian, that are ascribed to you really mean.
Yes, and rebel humanitarian is something that I'm going to divide the two words up, because most people say, why are you using the word rebel? What does that mean? But rebel is a very spiritual term. Rebel is the individual that truly understands that we are here to fully live our lives in the greatest expression and expansion that we have available to us. And that means realizing and embodying the fact that there is nothing wrong. There is no problem outside of us. There is no problem inside of us. That we are here to fully dive into our creative capacity, which is the image and likeness of what we came from. The rebel knows that when you live this way, then whatever bubbles up as inspiration will automatically and organically be the solutions to the so-called problems of the world. Humanitarian, rather than being that broad-based view of what we think of as humanity, it is more about looking at our own humanity and being willing to see, feel, acknowledge, and hear that. Because so many individuals are bypassing that part of themselves. There's an indifference in the world, an apathy in the world, and when we can't see ourselves, we can't see anyone else. So all of the work that we are doing outside is really for naught, because if we really aren't even seeing ourselves, then even those efforts outside of us are some attempt to try to find value and to try to love a part of us that we're not willing to truly embrace. And so I use those terms to kind of get people to stop and really evaluate what those words mean to them and what they think themselves are. And then ultimately I like to lead people to a place to understand that I am an example and that we are all examples, and that's all we can be. And our best example is to illustrate to other people the degrees of self-love, self-care, authenticity, and vulnerability that we can express and experience on the planet.
Self-love are two words that, tend to get warped quite a lot. I mean, we see so much around us of people who are definitely loving themselves before they're loving anybody else, but not in the way that we might wish them to. I mean, humanity, when we look around at what's happening in the world today, it's very difficult to think about, people as being humanitarian. We see so much inhumanity. How do you hold on to these, these words, these beliefs, this way of being in the world in the face of all of that?
I have a very strong belief and understanding, purely from experience, that everything that shows up outside of us is mirroring us. It is a conversation with the universe. It is the world speaking to us as us, about us. And so everything that we're seeing, no matter how tragic, horrific, violent, sad, that shows up on our televisions, in our communities, in the news, or that even shows up as a thought in our mind, it is illustrating an aspect of us that we are not willing to see, or that collectively we are all still carrying and suppressing but not acknowledging and integrating. And because I know that, I live my life looking at things and then looking at myself as to where is that in me. That is so much the crux of my first book, Conversations with the Universe. I, too, was one of those persons that kept trying to do love and kept expanding what I thought self-love was, and had reached a great degree of loving myself and caring for myself. But I didn't realize still how far that was. Even when I wrote this book, and all of my books somehow, they come into me, whether you call it channeling or whether it's insight or wisdom that is known in the cells of our body before we even know, they come into me with the wisdom of an experience that I'm about to happen, almost as a guide to me. And this book was written at a time when I had a very tragic occurrence in my own life where my 2 children were no longer with me. And that experience brought me to the ground to such a degree that I knew if there is this much pain showing up in my life, and this is the type of experience that I'm being given, then there's something inside of me, such a deep degree of self-betrayal that I have not addressed, that I don't even realize exists. And so the only way that I'm ever going to figure out what that's trying to tell me is to go in it, to go through it, to become it, to let it consume me to such a degree that I allow it to obliterate me, that I allow it to annihilate whatever identity that would have the beliefs and the thoughts and the feelings to create this kind of experience in my life. Because we are reality creators. We create based on our perceptions, and based on those perceptions and beliefs, we make actions, and we do create every single thing in our lives. And that took me on an incredible journey into the void, into the black hole, into the places of pain and sadness and grief and terror and anger and rage and all of those things that no one wants to call love and light. But yet, that's what the shadow is. The shadow is simply part of the polarity of light. And rather than trying to kill that side off or cut the cords or cleanse it away or decide I've already finished that work, I don't need to do it anymore, I love myself, my ego tells me I do, we have to be willing to say, if I'm not willing to own those sides of me, that aspect of me, or even acknowledge that this exists in me, then I'm really only half living. And maybe that's why my joy is not showing up. Maybe that's why my partner's not showing up. Maybe that's why the career of my dreams is not showing up. Maybe that's why I'm not at peace in my life. And the experience that I went through over the next 2.5 years, I stayed in that place until every piece of it was expunged from myself, to where one day I woke up and I knew that there was none of that left, that it, and when I say that, I don't mean it was gone, it means it was absorbed. None of it was left in the shadows. It was now all in the light. It was all seen. It was all heard. It was all acknowledged. And the experience of self-love that I have now is so many times compounded than what my head thought love was. And it really is the experience that's in this book, the guiding experience of letting go of our identities and allowing that annihilation, which I'm certain sounds horrifying to people, but it is ultimately where we're got to go.
Well, you know, I'm listening to you and I'm wondering, from where did you find the courage to do that and to stay with it for 2.5 years? That's one hell of a journey.
I just know that I had to do it. There was something that compelled me, and I'm a personal growth enthusiast. I am someone that is so devoted to the soul. My greatest longing my entire life, even when I was a tiny child, I remembered I want to know unconditional love. I really, really wanted to receive unconditional love and feel unconditional love. But I didn't realize in wanting that experience, that meant I was going to create an experience where I had to truly know unconditional love, meaning unconditional love for others that had been involved in the experience of my children no longer being with me. And to stay there, it was more out of a commitment to a knowing that I had been someone that had done my work, that I was committed to myself, that there had to be something beyond the experience that was happening in that moment. But I knew I needed to have certain places of support, because when you choose to go into the darkness, and I consciously chose to go there and to sink into it, you have to have some type of tether, some type of life support that can at least be a touchstone for you to stay connected to or keep you in a place, because you're going into the deep recesses of the mind. You're going into the darkest places of the heart. You are going back into the cells of the body that have a memory that you can't explain because it occurred between the ages of 0 and 7, when you didn't have the emotional intellect. And so it was having someone else also that really understood the process of spiritual and personal growth, and having them not do anything but witness, because this wasn't about being coached, this wasn't about being healed, this was about feeling. And it was about having certain practices that allowed me to stay in it. And walking was one of those practices. I must have walked through the neighborhoods 3 and 4 times a day and walked it out. It's silence, it's meditation, it's not escaping into the many things that we escape into, our phones, our music, our books, or another practice, another protocol, another workshop, another glass of alcohol, another pill, another this, that, or the other. It's saying, none of those things have ever done anything for me before. Let me go somewhere else inside of myself instead and really see what's creating these situations again and again and again.
Wow. That's quite a commitment to yourself, and I think that many people would say, okay, yes, I can get that intellectually, but I've got my work, I've got my family, I've got my responsibilities, I can't take that amount of time. What would you say to that?
Our lives are here so that we learn to trust, and if life is not feeling at peace and it's not feeling fulfilling, and you're just going through this mundane experience, you can either drag out the pain and have a slow death, which is what most people are doing, or you can just say, I'm going to take this period of time, figure it out, and then I'm going to have a life that is worth living. I am going to be in aliveness.
You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with transformational catalyst, publisher of 1111 magazine, and author Simran Singh about her book, Your Journey to Love. Discover the path of your soul's true mate. We'll be back after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
I'm Fidel Nsombo. I was born in a city called Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Simran Singh, you say that every challenge in our life boils down to one longing, which is communion as relationship. Tell me more about that.
Ultimately, I believe we all want connection. Everyone outside of us is a projection of where we desire to have that connection. Even the person that upsets us, whatever experience is happening between that person, that is a connection to that aspect of us that we want to know. And ultimately, we want to return back to the self. We want to return back to the creative essence that brought us forth. And so the greater disconnection that we see in the outer world, it is the degree of disconnection that we are having on the inner world. And the communion that we create with ourselves, the time of silence, the time of really listening to ourselves and giving ourselves, even if it's just 30 minutes a day, to say, how are you? How is your heart? What are the thoughts that are going through my mind today? Where am I living? Am I living in this moment right now? Or do I keep sending myself to the past and keep looking to the future for something that I could really have in this moment if I really knew what I wanted? And I think what we would find out if we really decided to be in a place of communion with ourselves is we would discover all of the conditioning, which is part of the reason I wrote the book the way I did. Every beginning chapter starts with the heart, and the heart speaks vulnerably about where we are, about the longings that we have, about the heartbreaks, about the fears that we have about the future, or the regrets we have about the past. Those things sit in the heart. Those feelings are what create our reality outside of us, whether we are going to suppress them or whether we acknowledge them until we actually absorb them. And then the next section is about the mind, and it's about retraining the mind to be present rather than bouncing back and forth between the past and the future, because they just don't exist. And the conditioning and the identity that we are living our lives from is a false aspect of ourselves in the first place. So it's about peeling away that identity to bring about a new mind that will allow us to have new eyes to see things from, because the perceptions that are twisted will only create a twisted path.
There are many passages in your book, The Journey to Love, that I found very profound. One that really impacted me was when you were writing about us as children, or all children, and you were saying that children are sponges, sucking up all experience into the body on cellular levels, emotional levels, and as energy. They subconsciously carry generational secrets until the same experiences have to be lived out, all from the burden of holding stuff that was not theirs to begin with. Details and expression may change, but the essence of the secret remains. Betrayal, abandonment, abuse, scandal, and so forth, all breeding more of the same. It's all energy, changing form and changing hands. Childhood clearly is where everything begins, and it is such an important, precious time in life. You know, what can we do to stop it with us? I mean, I know you talk about having to learn to love ourselves, but it seems to me that learning to love oneself is a lifetime process. And during that lifetime process, you know, we would have had our children, imprinted them, and they would have grown up to do the same.
The beauty of our children is they are here as our teachers. In Conversations with the Universe, I write that children will actually show us exactly where our wounds are. If you have a child that goes through something, my child, for instance, ended up in the hospital at the age of 3, and he had a severe asthma attack and he couldn't breathe, and it happened on Mother's Day. And so right there is a very clear conversation with the universe. This had to do with me. It had to do with not being able to breathe. Asthma is a symbol of grief and sadness that's not expressed. But we look at it as, oh my goodness, my child's sick. I've got to take care of my child. I've got to do this. And we go into this panic and we focus our vision on something that's outside. When rather than my child having an issue with asthma and going on with this condition that he had basically picked up from me, because they are open when they come in. They do pick up all of the energies. They pick up the emotions. They feel things whether we speak them or not. Had I done my work around my grief then, had I known to do that, then I would have cleared to where he wouldn't have had to experience that. And that's part of what the sins of the father statement in the Bible is about. The sins of the father, the sins of the mother, are the self-inflicted thoughts that are false, the beliefs that we carry, the emotions that we tend to carry that we don't allow ourselves to be aware of. And so because our children pick up the energy as energy and then carry that in their body, and then they pick up how they respond emotionally to things because they watch us respond emotionally to things or not respond at all in most cases. And then they pick up the beliefs because they intellectualize, the same way we've taught them to intellectualize because we brainwashed them into our way of thinking. And they pass that on to then their children and then their children, except for when we say, or that child says, or their child ends up saying, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't sound right, this doesn't make sense. And we start to question. Or we find someone that says, you know what, I'm willing to do better and be better. I'm willing to love better. This hurts enough now that I'm willing to stop and really look at it. There's no one else in the room except you and God. And so if something keeps happening, if you keep finding yourself in the same situation again and again, but different people, different experiences, it's not the stuff outside of you. There's something inside of you that is attracting that.
In that passage that I quoted about children, you said that we actually can see opportunities for stepping back upon the soul path at every double-digit mastery age, 11, 22, 33, 44. What happens at those age markers to help us step back on the soul path?
11 actually is a master number. All of these are master numbers, and 11 is the gateway to mastery. And so what I have discovered is that at the age of 11, every single one of us has some type of experience that takes place that really rocks our world. And that could be a divorce, it could be the birth of another child, it could be the move to another city, it could be the death of someone. It will be something that we as a child perceive as really shaking us up. And in that moment, we will either decide to remain knowing who we are, or we will veer off the path and start to really shield away our intuitiveness, our open-heartedness, the part of us that we know to be whole. And we get an opportunity to reclaim that at every double-digit number because we will have a like experience or something that feels the same way occur then at 22 and 33 and 44 and 55. And so we always have this opportunity to come back and reclaim the things that were lost. But particularly those ages are extremely powerful.
But of course, I would think that in our younger years, we're not even aware that we've got that opportunity.
No, I don't know that any of us really understand that at the age of 11. I do believe children are changing now. I think the children that are coming in now, they have something inside of them that really is anchored in the truth of who they are. They don't pick up on the energies of us as quickly as we did as children. And so something is definitely shifting on the planet. But what is showing up in the world around us is still illustrating for us to give our children a planet worth having, or a planet at all, requires us to do our work.
It's interesting that we're seeing, generations of children from the millennials down who seem to have a different sense of themselves than we did, a stronger sense of themselves, and they are not so willing to embrace the things that, their parents, embraced without even thinking about them. Some of society's old mores, etc. Is this what you're referring to when you say that you feel that there's a whole other type of individual, coming onto the planet?
Yes, I do. I think, with different planetary energies, with however things are shifting on a more ethereal realm, we are having a new type of child that's being born, and it definitely did begin more strongly with the millennials, and you can see it. They're returning. It's almost as if we're returning back to the hippie era, except they're more grounded. They're stronger. They're not disconnected, they're detached. And when I say detached, that doesn't mean that they are separate from. Detached actually is even more connected. It actually feels even more. It just means that you're not as attached to an outcome, but you'll give your all emotionally and with presence and passion. And I think that that's what we're seeing with them. And perhaps, that is also partially because they're not getting the connection and the guidance from all of us, because there are more and more people doing their work now. There are more and more people that are willing to stop and meditate. There are more people that actually are willing to even contemplate stopping their lives and activating a deeper degree of self-love. So something is shifting both in the generations prior to that as well as in the people that are being born.
Yeah, it certainly seems that they want to write new stories, and it's interesting that you say, you know, it is our stories that keep us separate. How do we begin to let go of our stories and the identities that we create around them?
We have to know what they are. You know, I think we were a society in a world at one time that stories were passed down and passed down and passed down. They were passed down from a place of reverence and a real embrace and more of a pride and a culture of where we came from. And then stories became this way to punish ourselves. It became this way to victimize ourselves. It became this way to raise up a flag and say, this is what was done to us, even to the point of where we create, let's say politically, marches and different things like that. We're using stories to say, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, and it's creating a fight. Whereas if we can understand that the stories that have taken place were part of a great mythology, a part of a great sacred text that has not yet ended and has the ability to have a very great ending where there's this unification, everything would change. And so we have to let go of the identities and the stories and the eyes from which those identities viewed things. And when people stop long enough, or when they're willing to witness themselves and look at themselves, they can start to realize, you know, who's the one really thinking this? Because if you start to understand that there's more than one you there, you'll start to realize which is the greater you.
You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with publisher of 1111 magazine, host of 1111 Talk Radio, and author Simran Singh about discovering the path of your soul's true mate. We'll be back after the break.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatePR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
If you own a gun, you have a full-time responsibility. When you aren't using it, be sure it can't get into the hands of curious children, troubled teenagers, a thief, or anyone else who might misuse it. Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org. This message brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Simran Singh, as your book so clearly demonstrates, we are our soul's true mate. So once we truly know that, what happens to the desire for an external soulmate?
Once we discover that part of us that had all of the stumbles and the falls, that made the choices that kind of sent us off track, really did so that we would discover our true light and the true meaning of peace and love and joy and bliss and all of those things that everyone's desiring. we come to a place of such fullness and completeness that there's not the requirement of anyone outside of us. It doesn't mean that we can't have a partner or another person in our life. It just means we don't need that. And I put quotes around the word need, because right now the version of love that most people have is they're looking for someone to complete them. They're looking for someone that they need. They need someone to be there at night. They need someone to care for them. They need someone to support them. And that is the codependent love that we've been taught. But if we can become these individuals that are so whole and complete, that understand that our ultimate true purpose is our own presence and our own personal growth and spiritual path, then we can allow someone to come into our lives that also sees that for themselves. And we'll have two people that don't want to change one another. We'll have two people that are willing to honor one another and their path, whichever direction that path has to go. And that's a very different kind of love. That's a much more expanded experience of love. There's nothing binding. There's nothing holding. There's nothing codependent about that type of experience. And so it's not about saying I don't need anybody. It's about saying I'm so complete that I am holding the greatest experience of love within myself, that I can attract someone else that is equal to that, or that I can love many and I can be on my own, pulled up by myself. And that is really what the experience is that we are all looking for and what's going to create a greater world. Ultimately, I believe, and we're very far away from this, but ultimately I believe that we're going to end up with a world where there is not men and women, that masculine and feminine is going to come together, that we eventually become an androgynous society. And there are many keys and signs that are illustrating that for us right now. We see men embracing more of their femininity. We see, women have kind of over-masculinized and they're coming back to balance with that. We see LGBT communities. We see all of that is taking place, transgender. All of these different things are signs and symbols of this movement towards a species that will eventually one day become more androgynous, because the love and the completeness is so fully within oneself.
Why do you say that the quality of innocence is required now more than ever?
Because we shroud everything that we do, think, and say from an identity or the conditioning of the past. And if we really do want to create a new world experience of aliveness, if we really want to create a new version of love or a new experience of abundance and wealth and personal power, we have to be willing to not only see from new eyes and new actions, but really return to that innocence of the child. We have to come from that place of wonder and excitement and open-heartedness that the original child knew and illustrates to us so very clearly when we have a child around us, a child that has not been conditioned or has not soaked up any of the energies of repressed emotion that is sitting around it. And I talk a lot about that in my second book, Your Journey to Enlightenment, because it is about releasing the things that bind us, the things that conform us, the things that turn us into Stepford men and Stepford women, the things that have created a society of drones rather than the unique genius that we each have. And, the child is playful. They have wild abandon. They have no fear. That is what innocence provides for us.
Do you feel, having spent those 2.5 years really diving within very deeply, do you feel that you have resolved the issue? Do you feel like you've completed your journey to love, or is it an ongoing process for you?
I have such a deep reverence and such a sacred experience of aloneness now. Oftentimes when I talk about these things, I think, are people grasping what I'm saying? Because I don't know how to even put into words the feeling that I have now of how complete I am in my aloneness, and how happy I can be for long periods of time just in that, and so fulfilled, and never have a wanting, never have a longing. And yet I can be with people, and I can love people, and I can celebrate people. I have a true, deep integration of what it means to be detached and yet hold the heartbreak of the world, to hold the grief and the pain and the sadness and the tragedy that exists, and yet see all as capable and know all things will come to pass. But it's not from that love and light attitude that is so purported so often in spiritual and religion. It is from a place of the both and. It is the reverence of the shadow and the light and being the bridge of the two. And so I have certainly advanced my degree of self-love infinite number of times beyond what I knew when I wrote this book, or the 2 times before when I tried to write this book. And I don't really believe anyone leaves the planet until they're done. And so as long as I'm on the planet, I'm sure I've got something else to learn and experience. And I'm not going to be so arrogant to say that I wouldn't have something else to learn. But this has been the most deeply fulfilling and incredible experience in the last 3 years of growth and expansion of the heart that I could have ever imagined. It wasn't the easiest thing going through it, but by far it has been the most enriching and soul-fulfilling and heart-opening experience having come through it.
Of all the speakers, teachers, authors I've ever met, and I've met a few in my time, you are the only one that says, I am not a teacher, I am an example.
You know, I think we can only be our own teacher. I don't think there's a single thing I could teach anybody. I can just give you my experience. I can be an example of something so that you can say, you know, maybe this is the step that I can take, or yes, I understand where she is. So if she's there and I've been here, then I can take this next step. We are all examples. And if we can really see that that's all we have to be, that our presence with ourselves and our presence to our own inner teacher is what is vital, the pressure comes off. It's not about attaining anything. It's not about getting to a certain point. It's not about what the world sees as success or manifestation. We are not here to be anything other than the best version of ourselves to ourselves, and to allow ourselves to experience and express everything possible on the planet that we feel the ability to step into. And so I invite everyone to be the example in your world. I think that's what Gandhi really, really meant when he said, be the change you wish to see. I believe he meant be the example that you want to see others being. And when we do that, we do change the world. At the very least, we change our own world. And that's enough, because whatever happens inside is going to reflect outside.
You know, as we said at the beginning, the greatest quest that people seem to have in life is to find their soul's true mate, or at the very least to love and to be loved. And as you so amply demonstrate in your book, the soul's true mate is not out there, it is within. If you could give our listeners one tip, one suggestion, one piece of advice that could help them along the road to discovering the one within, what would it be?
Be willing to discover your beauty and your brilliance that's sitting in the dark. Be willing to hear the cries of the fallen angel. Be willing to feel the animalistic part of us. Be willing to know that we all hold a demon and a God inside. Be willing to be human. We came here in a body. We are not here to go anywhere else except for inside that body. And every bit of wisdom that we need, every bit of courage, every bit of love, every bit of joy that we're looking for is going to be in the very depths of our own being. And so there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. We are simply here to be with ourselves.
Simran Singh, you are indeed an example to us all. I want to thank you so much for writing this book and rewriting it 3 times over in a period of 10 years and continually being willing to go deeper and, rewrite your own stories, which is really what it's all about, isn't it?
That's exactly what it's about. Are we willing to have a new story?
Yeah. Wow. Well, as a species, I hope that we are willing to create a new story for us, for the rest of humanity, for the planet. Simran, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It always is to be a pleasure with you, Sandie, and all of the amazing things that you do for everyone. So God bless you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Ditto. Your Journey to Love, Discover the Path to Your Soul's True Mate is published by New Page Books and available wherever good books are sold. And if you want more information about Simran, you can visit her website at iamsimran.com, and do check out her 1111 magazine, which is completely free to read. And this month, I think it's all about you, the creator. So you'll find that at 1111mag.com. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you'll join me next week for another edition of What Is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.